This conference will now be recorded.
I'll click that in so I don't forget it. All right, getting everything going technologically. Glad to be here with everybody. Welcome. Start in 30 seconds. Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to get started. This is the first of 3 scheduled information presentations that we have regarding the exciting new program that the city of Tiffin announced yesterday, for which we are providing the administrative support, the Tiffin Cares Small Business Relief Grant Program. We're pleased that you're able to join us. We're excited to share information about this program with you. This is a completely new program for the city, and it's a completely new grant funding source. Our community is one of the few that are doing it in the state of Ohio with small business grants. We're not the only one, and we're certainly following the lead of others, but it's not common. So it's pretty exciting that the Mayor Moss, Tiffin City Administration, and Tiffin City Council have decided to put this funding into play to try to help small businesses. And so I'm pleased to be here with you to kind of talk through this program. Okay, so I want to start before we get into the nuts and bolts of the program. These are 2 personal things. The top is a 1940 census of my grandfather who came over from Germany, as you see there. If you can't see it, I'll say it, via voice. But along with my grandmother, at the time he was 32, my grandmother was 30, my uncle was 10, and my mom was 4 months old, and they had a bakery in the 3rd ward of the city of Toledo for many years, so small business owners. And then my dad, it's a little bit about his obituary, but he had his own store called Ethical Pharmacy. In Toledo, there were a lot of major law changes that happened, and he had to close the store. So it certainly wasn't a pandemic, and there are lots of reasons people have to close their business, but he ended up working for major chains because he just wasn't able to make it. It kind of cut out a lot of the small pharmacies, made it much more difficult in that law in the late 50s and then early 60s to be able to continue to run his pharmacy. And so, although it's certainly not the same thing, I do have some empathy. I have a lot of small business. My grandfather on my dad's side also had a small machine installation shop, worked most of his life for GE. So, I have a sense, I have empathy and passion for small businesses. And I also know what it's like when, my dad would tell me about his pharmacy and then he couldn't continue to do it because of something that was outside of his control. That's kind of what we're dealing with here. So know that. I know the mayor has expressed this and city council, and we here at TCEP, we know there's a lot going on. So we hope this helps a little bit as we move forward. So that's just a little personal note. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk a little history of this program and the CARES money, just very briefly how we got to this point. Overview of the program. We're going to talk about eligibility, both in terms of businesses, what kind of businesses, what requirements do you have to meet in order to be an eligible business? What kind of businesses are explicitly ineligible from this program? And then not only do you have to be an eligible business, you have to have expenses that are eligible. And so we're going to talk about what kind of expenses are eligible under this program and what kind of expenses are ineligible under this program. And then once you're an eligible business with eligible expenses, that you can figure out what's the process to get the money that the city is making available from the federal government. What's the process to get that money, and what does it look like? What kind of requirements do you have in terms of paperwork and that kind of thing? And then we'll have a period at the end for questions and answers. So that's our agenda for today. First, let's start with a quick history. So the CARES Act. At the end of March of this year, $2.2 billion kind of released for a number of things, including big federal programs, and some of that also to local governments. There are things in the CARES Act and that happen locally at the state where that money has been released in bunches. Not all of it was released to local governments at once by the state of Ohio. They've done it in what we're calling rounds. And the most recent round, which is about half of the 1.2 billion, 650 million of it in the state of Ohio to local governments, was basically released by legislation that happened in the Ohio General Assembly and signed into law on September 2nd. So this month, just a few weeks ago. So when that was happening, Mayor Mont said to me, "Hey, I want to get a program up. We've stopped the bleeding at the city. We had to make sure to try to preserve our safety forces, our employees, all that kind of stuff. But we're going to be able to invest some of this money in what I want to do." And I'm hearing the same thing from other city council members and members of the administration, is I want to help our small businesses, which is something we've been trying to do all along. We've just not had direct funding to be able to do it. So he was pretty excited, and we were pretty excited to try to work on developing a program. And so the first step in that was for Tiffin City Council to approve setting money aside. There was nothing in the legislation about the amount, but the vast majority of the new money coming, $600,000, the city's putting that towards this. So truly exciting. And then we got cracking over at TCEP. We talked to a number of municipalities as well as counties, Hancock County, Hamilton County, and municipalities within there, Montgomery County, where Dayton is, but also Findlay, Hancock County, and a few others, to try to see, because they had been either set up programs that were in round one or round two, and then they were in their second or third round of funding at Richland County as well. And so it's kind of like, how did you do it? What did you learn? How did you think through this process? We knew we wanted to stand it up pretty quickly because there are federal requirements that have been recently extended, but this money's got to get spent by the end of the year. And it's kind of like, how do we do this well? So we really wanted to put something together and asking the advice, what would you do differently? How do we make it simple for the businesses, but yet meet the federal requirements of reporting? How do we impact the largest number of businesses and also at the same time, make the money as significant as possible? So it's a very thoughtful process, even though it's been quick. And I really appreciate all the time that the mayor and the administration put towards working with me on this. So again, benchmarking, and then how do we make it specific to the city of Tiffin? We're not big counties, big cities. With the funds that we have, how do we make it work here? And so we had some multiple discussions on what works, and you got to make hard policy decisions because you can't help everybody. We can't, we'd love to give everybody a ton of money. There's just, 600,000 for, the number of businesses that are here. It's significant, and making some of those policy calls, and then the logistics of setting up the program. How do we do that? How do we do it well and in compliance with the federal regulations? And then lastly, how do we manage people being able to access these programs. So one of the jobs that we do at the Tiffin-Seneca Economic Partnership, we act as the economic development agent of the city, we act as the downtown development agent of the city and community development agent of the city. So a lot of times we're helping companies access programs, but in standing one up, we were very concerned about making sure the experience was as user-friendly as possible, but also managing communication so that people felt like they could get answers, like they could connect and try to manage that and do a good job in helping people through the process. So yesterday, we launched the program in the media. It was in Seneca News Daily. This was late yesterday, and the Advertiser Tribune. We put it out, Mayor and others have put it out on social media. And so we've been trying to get the word out. And part of our launch is to do 3 of these kind of informational webinars. We're recording this so we can upload it to YouTube so people that can't be here right now will be able to participate. And what we think is important is that we're doing it before the application period opens. So what documents do I need to get together? What information do I need to have so that so people are kind of getting ready, and they can then get ready to put that information in, and then it's a much easier process. And I get there and I discovered I needed to have something and I didn't have it, and I got to go back and etc. So we launched it yesterday. We're excited about it and excited to bring you this first informational thing today. So from a program overview standpoint, this is a grant program. So this is not a loan. This is not a forgivable loan program. This is money that you don't have to pay back. Businesses don't have to pay back. That's allowed under the CARES Act. So one of the things that we've done to try to make the money, go as far as possible impact is that we're going, this is a small business program. And the way we're determining small business is both by income and by employment. But with respect to the grant amount, you have to have at least 30 employees. If you have 2 to 30 employees, you can get grants up to $6,000. If you have less than 2 employees, $3,000. Now, we already had a question, and if you go to tiffincares.com, there's a link to the frequently asked questions, and we already had a question from an accountant working on behalf of a business saying, okay, I have a business that has 32 employees, but they're part-time. 80% of them are part-time, so do they qualify or not? And so the definition that we're using of employees is anybody or any equivalent of 20 hours or more. So if you have 32 people at 20 hours a week, you would have too many employees. But if you have half of those working 10 hours a week or 15 hours a week, they can be added up to be an employee equivalent, and you would be under the 30 employee threshold. So that's just kind of the definition of employees and what that means. And then we're going to be talking, in addition to it being a grant program, because of the regulations, this is federal money, as well as trying to make good decisions. You got to be an eligible business. You have to have eligible expenses. You have to go through an application process, and then you get awarded the funds. Once you are noticed, you're given a notification that you've been awarded the funds. Important point to note that if this program is oversubscribed in terms of demand, we're going to do a lottery. The fairest way to do it, we've talked to a number of communities about this, fairest way to do it, and then we'll have a waiting list because you don't get the money even when you're awarded until you sign, and you sign together a grant agreement. And that agreement then will allow us to disperse electronically via ACH payment. We're not cutting checks, but we'll put it straight into your checking account and disperse those funds once we have the application signed. Then within 120 days, so roughly 4 months, you have to do a closeout report. The nice thing about the application, closeout report's going to be an online system. You can upload the documents, and also the closeout report's also going to be in that same. So when you register for the application, that's going to be the same system in which you do the closeout report. So you won't have to log in for something else, develop another account, or submit paperwork and how do I scan it. You can do the closeout report right at the same site. So that's an overview of the program. Again, a grant program for eligible businesses, eligible expenses, where you go through a process, sign an agreement, and then within 4 months after you get the money, or I should say after the money is dispersed, then you have to file a report. Eligible businesses. So you got to meet all of these requirements. You have to be a for-profit business. So not-for-profits are not eligible under this program. Public entities are not eligible under this program. You have to have a federal tax identification number, an EIN number. You also have to be within the corporate limits of the city of Tiffin. An important point to note here is that if you have a zip code, your mailing address says Tiffin, that does not necessarily mean you are within the corporate limits of the city of Tiffin. And one of the things that we're going to be doing when we're reviewing applications, and people are going to be asked to check, but we're going to review applications, is to ensure that they're in the city of Tiffin. Let's say you're on the edge and you're not sure. The best way to do it is to go to the auditor's website, and we have that in the program guidelines, and find out what your land parcel ID is in the auditor's website. If your parcel ID of the property in which your business is located starts with a Q, that's the tax district, that is City of Tiffin. And so that's how you will know, okay, and if it's a D or it's an F or it's something else, it means you're in the township and you're in an unincorporated area and you are not currently, you are not eligible for this particular program. Has to be a storefront or eligible home office. So obviously a storefront is a business. What is an eligible home office? That's a term by IRS. That's not something, we're coming up with what's an eligible home office. It's eligible as a term by the IRS. We have a link, if you don't know already, on the program guidelines to check out whether or not your home office is eligible or not. This program is also helping businesses that have been operational. So one of the things that companies, if it's a new business starting out and coronavirus kind of hit and they didn't know how to deal with it, this is really to help those businesses. Not that the new businesses aren't worthy and they're not important, but this is to really help those businesses that have been around for at least a year and a half, gotten through the first year of difficulty in being a business where, the majority of businesses don't kind of make it in the first year. So it's kind of depending on your industry. So you have to be established prior to January 1, 2019, which you can either see on the first page of your tax return, or you can go to the Secretary of State's website. We have a link to that also in the program guidelines to see when your articles of incorporation were filed. So that's, you got to have been established prior to the beginning of last year. You also have to be operational at the time you apply. So, one of the important things is that, we know that 3,000 and 6,000 is not going to make or break a business, but we know that everybody suffered. So there have been some businesses that haven't been able to make it. We know that there are ones that are operational and they're struggling. And so what this is designed to do, especially as we head into the winter months, is to give them some additional aid support, help them try to make it through. And again, we know we wish it were more money, which could be, and this isn't a silver bullet, but we're trying to give them a little bit of help to help keep them going, with hoping for brighter days ahead. And even though the economy has come back, I just heard a report from the State Economic Development Agency that half the jobs lost in Ohio due to coronavirus have come back. And so, I kind of equate that to, we have half the economy back, but I would, everybody I talk to, the vast majority of businesses are not. I'm not back where I was. So this is important. We want to help those that have been able to stick it out for whatever reason. And those that haven't, there's some great businesses, but this is one of those policy things, got to select, trying to help those keep going who have been able to open back up. I've talked about the 30 employees or less. You have to have a legal form that's that a wide variety. So limited liability company, C Corp, S Corp, sole proprietorship, limited partnership, and a couple others. So you have to have a legal business form, and so that's pretty much every eligible business. You can't be in bankruptcy or receivership. When you're applying, it doesn't mean if you had it in the past, that's different. But if you're in it right now, you're not eligible as a business. Have to have a 15% decline in revenue, which we had a question like, well, how do you measure that? So we're trying to be flexible because we know different businesses have different business cycles and there's such a thing as seasonality. So what we said is you can choose either, and this is in the frequently asked questions as well, but you can choose either March 15th to May 30th, 2019 versus 2020. You can choose January 1 through June 30th, 2019 versus 2020, or year to date. So whenever you apply, if you want to do January 1 through that date, if it's, let's say, the day the application goes live, say September 30th, you want to do it through the first 3 quarters year, that's fine. If a business can make an argument for some reason that this isn't, this not fair, we will listen to that argument. We don't want anybody to be disqualified because we're asking for something that doesn't really adequately capture the impact of the coronavirus on your particular business. No business interruption insurance. So if you had business interruption insurance, great foresight. and you got everything covered, where those businesses have gotten help from that insurance. And so this program is not designed to help those folks. The other thing that's not on the list that's on the screen, if you can see it, is that you have to have, there's a revenue requirement. So you have to have above $15,000 a year from this business. So people doing small side hustles, it's not designed to help that. So it's, it's got to be something, with some substance, substantial, but under $2 million. So I talked to a business last night. It's like at 3 million. And we're like, sorry, you're not going to be eligible. So it's really trying to help those whose annual income is under that number. That's a 2019 number. And the employee number is really what was your employment count as of March 15th, 2020. Okay, so that's kind of the eligible businesses. I know I'm going really fast. I talk up to 120 words a minute, so forgive me, but then we'll have open discussion at the end. And all of this is at tiffincares.com in the program guidelines and the frequently asked questions. Okay, so moving on to ineligible businesses. So this is not a list that includes everybody, but these are just to be clear, the kind of businesses that are not eligible include adult-oriented businesses, businesses focusing primarily on tobacco, cigarettes, electronic smoking, or vaping products. Also financial institutions like banks, savings and loans, credit unions that provide loans and credit are not eligible for this. Also, franchises are eligible if they're locally owned and independently operated, but if they're not eligible. Entertainment device, skill game types places are not eligible under this program. Businesses that are solely e-commerce businesses, they only do it electronically, not eligible for this businesses. Airbnb type businesses or Uber drivers, independent contractors on gig platforms are not eligible for this particular program, and real estate businesses. So if you own the building where a business is, your real estate, your commercial real estate rental business is not eligible. We want the business that's in your business to pay their rent, and that will give you the support you need. So we want to help those businesses that are leasing from you. And so any commercial or residential rental businesses, pass-through entities, real estate holding companies, real estate investment trusts are not eligible for this particular program. Again, we're making no judgment on any of these types of businesses, but again, policy decisions, just like with size of the business, just like with amount of revenue, these are policy decisions that want to focus on make the money go as far as possible to the businesses you want to help and support most. Okay, so if you've decided you're an eligible type of business, we got to figure out your expenses. We got to make sure that the expenses for which you would ask for funds are going to be eligible. And when you apply, you don't have to have it all worked out what all of the expenses are in advance. This is not a reimbursement grant. This is, you're going to say, but what you need to indicate is the category or categories of expenses that you are intending to claim. So this makes sure that you understand, and we understand that you understand what kinds of expenses are going to be eligible. So that includes mortgage payments or rent or lease payments for your location for your business. It does not include permanent residences. So that's an important point to make. Utility payments, so water, sewer, electric, gas, telecommunications, those kind of things, utility payments, vehicle and equipment leases, or payments to own. If that was purchased before March 15, 2020, those are eligible. But if you purchased a car for your business after that date, it's not eligible. If you purchased equipment after that date, it's not eligible. Salaries and wages of employees, very eligible, and that includes also potentially sole proprietor income. It could basically check out the program guidelines, but it could be it's a sixth of the 2019 income. But yeah, salaries and wages of employees, including if you own a business, you're not sole proprietor, but you're part of the business and you derive an income, that as well. So PPE and other COVID-19 expenses, costs that are related to the interruption of your business. So let's say one of your suppliers was completely disrupted and you couldn't get product, or you couldn't get a service that you need to deliver your product or service, and that lost you business. If you can demonstrate that or provide a cogent argument to that and quantify it in a way that makes sense, and it could be audited, and you're comfortable with that, then that's eligible. And I just talked about the portion of sole proprietor income. So these are the eligible expenses. which means that everything else is not eligible, basically. So you got to find expenses that fit in these categories. And when you're going to be submitting, so at the time of application, you're going to indicate which of these categories you're intending to submit. When you close out, do your closeout report, what you're going to report that you actually spent. And you're going to provide copies of bills. You're going to provide copies of payroll statements that validate this. You're going to scan and upload it. But we just want to know at the time of application what your eligible expense types are. And so nothing else really falls under the guidelines. This is all about helping to provide relief for those business expenses directly tied to the coronavirus pandemic. And this is what the federal government has determined are eligible expense types. And all of these expenses have to be incurred or paid on or after March 15, 2020. So if you're going back and say, okay, here's my utilities, here's my, my lease payments, here's my mortgage payments, can't go before coronavirus really hit. But it can be also up through December 15th. So there have been recent changes in legislation. So you can do expenses up through December 15th. Okay, moving on from there, ineligible expenses. There's a lot of different things that are ineligible, but like with ineligible businesses, to be clear on particular points, again, can't do any vehicles or equipment purchased after March 15th, on or after March 15th, 2020. No personal non-business expenses, no construction costs, no tax, licensing or fees to any governmental entity that you would pay. Can't do marketing expenses, can't do insurance, can't do advertising. And if these expenses you're going to have to attest that none of the expenses that you're going to be submitting, you already got covered by the PPP or the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. So if you got a forgivable PPP loan, which we as a nonprofit did, I can't say, okay, well, I have this payroll and I got a forgivable PPP loan, and now I'm going to go double dip and I'm going to go submit this for this. That's not gonna fly. So you can't do that as well. So just letting people know that up top. Now, it's okay that you received those funds. It's very okay that you went after those and got those funds. You just can't double dip. You just can't submit and get paid twice for expenses that weren't eligible. Okay, so that's kind of a lot of those. Again, all of those are in the program guidelines, and you can also email. I mean, everybody on here, you can email tiffin@tiffin-seneca.org. We were worried about the number of inquiries. Everybody on this line, if you go to senecasuccess.com and you see Audrey and my phone numbers or on social media, you can get a hold of us. We're trying to manage it, but it's been fine. Reach out individually if you want. Back to process and there is an application process. What's going to happen? That is not currently yet available. That will be ready for September 30th. So we're building it as we speak. And I'm confident we're going to get that set up. It's going to be an online system. You're not going to be submitting attachments. You'll be uploading. You'll be registering. It'll save. You can go back in and do other things later. Hamilton County was using it, so we know it's been effective, and these folks know what they're doing. And what'll happen is you go through there's kind of two parts to it. You'll register, and then the second thing is once you register, you'll have the ability to get a determination that you're eligible to apply. And it's going to ask, are you any one of these kinds of businesses? Are you, blah, 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 blah. Did you have a 15% decline in revenue? Blah, blah, blah. So if you can check yes or no as appropriate and you're eligible, it'll come back and it'll give you the button will appear to say you can apply. Then you hit that button. You won't have to repeat all those questions, but you'll have to, that'll give you the chance to input the other information that we need, as well as upload the document. So what we want to do is we don't want to give people false hope. If you're not eligible, we don't want you to apply and then hear from us and say, hey, I'm sorry, you're not eligible. We want people to know when they go through the eligibility determination that, oh, wow, this is why I'm not eligible. So we're working that if somebody is not eligible, it will tell that person specifically, this is what you checked, this is why you're not eligible for these funds. And we're also allowing, because I don't know if this has happened to you, but if you make a mistake and you click the wrong box or something, you will have the chance to go do it again. So everybody's is going to check boxes. I'm legally attesting all this is accurate. So, one of the things that we learned from everybody else is audit a small number of folks, and people have to legally sign that this is correct and accurate, and don't ask for 800 million pieces of paperwork so everybody proves it, all this stuff. So we're trying to make this easy as possible and make it user-friendly as possible. So once you get that button to apply, you can go in and apply. It's not a ton of questions, and there's going to be a couple things that you need. So on the documentation side, we made this as easy as possible. You need a W-9 because this is taxable income. So you just be aware of that when you're applying. It's going to be like you got $6,000. Now, if you're getting business losses, it's not going to be a huge burden that respect. Also, a first page of your tax return. But if you're a business doing a 1040 and you have a Schedule C, we're gonna need the entire Schedule C, and we'll dictate that. That's the only documentation that we'll need. So we're trying to minimize the amount of papers you gotta go get, the amount of things you gotta be able to upload. You're also gonna need to get, even though we will accept applications without this, I wanna tell everybody, you need a DUNS number. So DUNS relates to Dun & Bradstreet. The feds require it. It basically certifies you are a legitimate business in a physical location. It's very easy to get. There's links in the program guidelines or links on Tiffin-Cares.com through the program guidelines. You'll be able to get that. The reason why I'm saying that now is because it can take a day, it can take 2 days. There have been stories of it taking a couple of weeks. So if the application process opens on September 30th and goes till a week and then goes till the following Monday, and then we make awards like, let's say, October 19th, you don't want to start getting your DUNS number then because we want to award it. Because if we don't have a DUNS number, we're not going to execute a grant agreement with you, and then you're not going to be able to get your money. So that would be one of the first things I would say of the things you need to kind of work on now. You need to have your federal tax ID, et cetera. So you'll do the application, again, relatively simple. What'll happen is that all the applications will be taken for the time. We'll be notifying everybody if your application is complete and eligible. But that doesn't mean you've been notified you've won funding. And so when that happens, so there's a question, Ryan, we'll get to that. We'll get that to you we'll get that in a minute. You may have, so I'll leave Ryan's question. All questions we'll deal to the end, but if you put them in the chat, we can get to them first when we get to the end. So back to the application process, we try to make it easy. And then we're going to process all those. And on or before, I believe, October 19th, we will make the notification of the awards. So if we get more, so if you apply in the beginning of the application period, you're not going to be at any more advantage than someone who applies the last day. So this is not first come, first serve. This is just making sure. Now, the good thing about applying on the front end is you make sure your application is complete and eligible. And then you'll know you're in the waiting room to hopefully be selected to get some of this grant. So once we make those notification of awards, we will be getting grant agreements to people. We're going to put a copy of a template grant agreement online. We have not done that. That'll happen probably within the next day or two, so people can read it, say, okay, what am I going to be signing? What am I going to be liable for? We'll put a copy of the closeout report, which also will be online, but you can see what you're going to be asked to do. And that closeout report, again, once we get a signed grant agreement and you upload it, then we will disperse the funds to you, to the account given. Within, I think, 10 business days, to the best of our attempt, hopefully sooner. And if you don't get it, you can reach out to us, and we'll track it down and see what's going on. Everybody checks when they apply that they understand that they are going to be eligible for, they'll be eligible for an audit. So we could audit and then require a small number of these companies to prove, for example, that they had the decline in revenue equal to 15%. We could ask businesses to, provide a W-3 or really, prove that you had the number of employees that you had. So just everybody needs to understand that even though we're not asking for it, you could be asked and you are agreeing to be audited and have to provide documentation beyond what you submit in the application if it comes to that. So just it's not planned for everybody, but be aware it's kind of like when you submit your taxes, right? Not everybody gets audited, but some do. So again, we're not saying it's going to happen, but just so you know that it could happen. Okay. So for more information, Tiffin-Cares.com is the site. Again, there's a frequently asked questions right off of that you can go to, and we're already putting answers to the questions, and the questions that we're getting, we're going to continue to put those up. We're providing a kind of a quote unquote guarantee to respond within 24 hours, given the all the things that are coming in. And sometimes we want to make sure that the city administration, that we're accurately articulating what the policy of the city is, because we are working on behalf of and for the residents of the city of Tiffin and the elected officials, and so we want to make sure we're articulating things appropriately. Place you can, Tiffin Cares at tiffinseneca.org. Again, we had a question, and Audrey and I both have access to the account, so we will see it, and we will answer it as quickly as possible, and then let you know that it's been posted on FAQ, but we'll get back to you as soon as possible. And then we have 2 other informational webinars after this. We have one right before the application goes live, and I'm hoping that application is ready, up and running, and to be able to kind of walk through it would be my ideal. And then Thursday, in the middle of the application, or farther on in that week, once the applications have opened, we'll do another one at 7. We are recording these, so we're going to put them up on YouTube. That link is also available at tiffincares.com, or you can just search Tiffin-Seneca Economic Partnership in YouTube, and you will find it. So, okay, so here are some questions. So Ryan has asked, why is there a minimum revenue of $15,000? Because we're trying, Ryan, the policy answer is because we're trying to help not, with the, if let's say I'm a sole proprietor and I'm doing a business of $10,000, that's, you have to make a cut. It's like, when is business too big? It's a small business program, but it's also trying to do something that's a significant business, and not just, hey, I sell Avon. And not that Avon can't be a significant business, but let's say I sell, I don't know, $2,000 worth of Avon, and I want to apply for up to $2,000 because I've lost $2,000 because nobody's buying Avon. There's nothing illegitimate about that. That's a viable business. It helps the economy. But the policy decision is that's not what this program is targeting. It's targeting substantial businesses with at least 15,000. So it's not just a little side hustle. That's why there's a minimum revenue requirement, because it's really designed to hit small businesses that are, of at least a minimal size, that it's significant and large, and somebody is spending significant time, effort, energy, and making a significant portion of their income based on that business. So that's the answer to the question. Donna Gross has asked, is my established date based on my assigned federal EIN or when I relocated my business to Tiffin? Donna, I will get you an answer to that question. Again, this is a new program. I hear you, so that's a good question. So we have some, I don't want to answer that, but Donna, we will get back to you. We have your email address, and we'll get you that. I don't have that right now. Sometimes it's things we haven't thought of, and I don't want to misspeak. So we will get back to you ASAP on that. But that's a great question, because you're not the only successful business in other communities that decide, hey, I want to come to Tiffin and be successful. So we will get back to you as soon as possible. But thank you for that question. So with that, Audrey's kind of working with me. Audrey Flood is our development manager for entrepreneurship. Audrey is working with me to help work on this program. We're kind of tag teaming it. So you can feel free to contact Audrey at any time, and she's going to be processing a lot of this, and she's been so helpful in it. So if you have any questions, Audrey is an organizer. Well, she can unmute you if you'd like to speak. You could raise your hand, or you can put it in the chat button if you're driving or want to speak. Just let us know. Audrey can, or I can unmute you. I want to make sure we're answering all the questions. And I'm going to unshare the screen. So does anybody have anything that they would like to ask in addition to what we've kind of shared today? Okay, Mayor, would you like to make some comments on, since you're here on this program, and kind of what led you to do this and what you're hoping to accomplish with this program?
Sure, David. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. First off, I want to thank you and your staff for all of their hard work and the time that they have spent to develop the ins and outs of this program. I know there was a lot of very late evenings, especially for you, or maybe they were early mornings, I guess. I'm not quite sure, but I know you spent a lot of time helping develop this program, and I really appreciate it. I also thank City Council for their willingness to consider the program. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of businesses in Tiffin, especially small businesses, are struggling. That's why we put this program together. You know, looking at the amount of money that we have available, I think it's safe to say it's probably one of the larger grant programs of a city of our size in the state of Ohio. I know I've seen other communities that have done it. Fremont is going down the route. Findlay has done it. They've only done like $150,000 programs. We have a program here in Tiffin that borders on $600,000, because that's how much we here at City Hall want to assist our local businesses who have really struggled through this. Really due to no fault of their own. They've been caught in the crosshairs between this virus and statewide mandates from either the governor's office or the Ohio Department of Health. And we've got to do what we can to help them. $3,000 or $6,000 is likely not going to make up their entire loss in this time period. But what it does is it helps supplement money that hopefully they have already received from state or federal resources. And it's just an additional shot in the arm to our struggling businesses. It may help make the difference between that business that decides to just permanently close down versus remaining open. And at the end of the day, I do not want to leave any stone unturned when it comes to helping our local businesses. And that's why I continue to stress local, is because franchise businesses, especially that are owned by the corporation, they have other ways to help bail themselves out. They've got the corporate structure above them to assist them. Locally owned businesses in Tiffin do not have that. So that's why we're here to say that the franchise businesses were excluded unless it is a small franchise that is owned by a Tiffin individual. You know, we've got to help these local businesses that are really struggling to make ends meet. You know, it breaks my heart going into a lot of our local, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a retail store, and hearing these stories, because they're all struggling to various degrees. So please help share this information with your fellow business owners, your friends, because I would hate to have money left on the table here. So again, thank you to David and the TCEP staff and the City Council for backing this and helping put the program together. I think it's going to be really good for the Tiffin community.
Thank you, Mayor. And one fact I was thinking about as you were speaking, you know, outside of Cincinnati and Dayton, that are directly receiving money from the federal government to the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars, we have the largest grant amounts of anyone that I've talked to. Because most communities are doing 5. Some are trying to up it to 7,500, bigger communities than us. So you get like Akron, Summit County. So for a community of our size, we have the biggest grants in the state of Ohio for a community this size. So I really appreciate the city doing everything it can to try to do, you know, as much as it can to help businesses. So I really appreciate Mayor, you and City Council and the administrative folks who, you know, like Brent Howard and others who put a lot of time in on this. So again, everybody here, feel free to reach out. Donna will get back to you on the question, and Ryan will try to post the answer to your question on FAQ too. Thank you, everybody. Good luck. Again, reach out if you have any additional questions. Thanks, Mayor. Talk to you all later.